Welcome, Andrew. Welcome, ABIB. We got a draft board in front of us. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing amazing.
Awesome. Happy to be here. I think that this is the time of night to do podcasts at my house. I think I've got the lighting done correctly now. We'll see as the sun sets over my head whether I get worse and worse as time goes on. But I think that lighting is fine for now.
Yeah, I'm having all types of issues over here, but
No, I like it. I like it. You look angelic.
Well, we are in the Millie Billy streets tonight. We're on a time crunch. I say we just skip the song, fellas, and we just get after it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We had a draft head-to-head where Andrew and I split a team with ABIB. We did this not knowing we were going to be in the same draft before we did this. I love being able to DM ABIB and ask him about my builds and kind of talk shop. So I don't love drafting against him, but I think it was a good process because we were able to talk about it now. So ABIB, you got the 101 in this draft. Maybe talk about your process going McCaffrey. Is that every time you get the 101 right now?
I mean, it shouldn't be, but it pretty much is. Oddly enough, I just landed the 101 yesterday in a main, and we were joking around that I should probably go Jonathan Taylor, and I couldn't pull the trigger. It was honestly between McCaffrey, Kupp, and Jefferson. McCaffrey, Jefferson, and Chase. I'm really, at that spot, that 101. I mean, you can't really go wrong with a lot of guys, but really what I'm just looking for in general when I'm drafting out of the first round is a guy who can like really just break the draft. Someone who can just really put up, like in Christian McCaffrey's case, 400 plus points over the course of a fantasy season. And, with Nyheim Hines there and the lack of receiving work, I feel like that upside is capped. But again, there's no issue with going Jonathan Taylor 101. I just have a little bit higher risk profile when going for guys with they carry a little bit more risk.
You see the video game numbers from somebody else, and you didn't mention bye weeks. It has nothing to do with the week 14 bye week for Jonathan Taylor at all.
Yeah,
that's not factoring in there.
Yeah, I largely ignore it for the most part. Okay. I think you can make an argument going both ways. Ideally, barring any injury, I have my guys for 14 plus weeks. You know, and so they're likely going to ideally put me in the points leader or have me, in a position where in my particular league I have the best record. So that, in the FFPC format, there are multiple ways of getting into that large field tournament towards the back end of the year. So I try not to let the bye week sway me too much, especially when you have so many elite options who have bye weeks during that time. So I'll figure it out when we get there. I got 14 weeks to come up with a plan.
Yeah, good. No, I like that, and even then, I'd almost say, if one were to let it affect you, I'd almost rather have the week 14 bye week than the week 13 with because by the time you're in week 14, if you're really playing for championship, I think that you're already in the money or at least break even on that particular team. Maybe the way the payout structures work. So, anyways, we can move on from bye weeks, but not important. But figure I'd throw it out there.
And ABIB, you guys are putting out awesome stuff at first and 15. Is the whole first and 15 team, Theo and Chris, are you guys all on McCaffrey at the 101, or is there a little bit of headbutting in the group chat right now?
There's definitely some headbutting. Chris thinks I'm crazy. I think there is some recency bias, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, yes, he's been injured, but, for me, I wouldn't say I'm largely injury agnostic. I think it's, dependent on the player. For me, I try to avoid guys coming back that first year off of ACL. But with Christian, he really hasn't, had any serious injuries. These have all been kind of soft tissue injuries that, ideally he's recovered from. We haven't heard anything out of camp. So right now he's going in at 100%. Is he more likely to pull a hamstring? Possibly. But that, again, it depends on your kind of, risk profile. And for me, I'm willing to take that risk given the potential production that he can give me over the course of a season. So no previous surgeries. He's still fairly young. I love this type of back who can dominate on the ground, in the receiving, in the air, and then, at the goal line.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that he's you have to have an optimistic approach to drafting. I think a lot of people worry a lot about what could go wrong, but I think what could go right with Christian McCaffrey is he could be a 30-point per game guy. And I agree with you that it's hard to see Taylor having that unless he just goes for an absurd amount of like long touchdowns this year, or he has some sort of an outlier profiler where Hines goes down or something like that. And then Andrew, we get Justin Jefferson at the 104. This was pretty easy for us.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that?
No, this was my second main. I got pick 3 the first time, pick 4 this time with you. Two Justin Jefferson teams. And I would have chosen, or I think the only debate maybe that I was trying to throw out there was maybe Jamar Chase. Mm-hmm. But just to give you some credit and a little bit of 30 seconds to tell everyone about your awesome build. Didn't you get in your main Jamar Chase?
I have a Jamar Chase 110 share, so 110. I don't want to brag so hard, but it's I ran pure with that one.
Yeah, your feedback to me was, sorry, Andrew, I've already got my Chase team at 110. We can't be going Chase at 104. So there'll be plenty of other opportunities to grab Chase in between this, like what, 5 and 10. So we went Justin Jefferson since we had the opportunity there. So we can move on to that one.
Yeah, we can move on. So Andrew and I have talked about this a lot, ABIB, and I don't know if you're seeing this in your main events and your football guys builds, but it seems like certain teams go into these drafts with a preconceived idea of what they want to do with their builds. And it goes more past getting your guy, and it's more like, this is the position I want to hit in this round. I think it's bad process. We see 4 wide receivers to end this first round. Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel. The Deebo one kind of stands out. Mm-hmm. What are your guys' reactions to that? I know we like having the occasional unique build, especially if you're going high volume, but maybe some reaction to what Team 12 did.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it just kind of comes down to whether or not he's, where he has Deebo ranked. I mean, if he has Deebo ranked as, kind of one of his top 5 wide receivers, I don't take too much issue with it. For me personally, I don't have Deebo, really ranked in this, in the first 2 rounds for me, just kind of given all the uncertainty there. So I wasn't necessarily a fan of it, but then you saw that he sort of kind of just went wide receiver berserk. I guess he went, pseudo hero tight end / RB. But for me, that's not necessarily my preference. And to kind of get back to what you were saying earlier, as far as going in with the idea that I'm going to do a 0 RB or hero RB or robust RB or whatever. I just really don't ascribe to that. Honestly, it's as simple as just get the guys who score the most points, draft the right guys. And it really doesn't matter to me, what the type of build is. Now, if you're someone who just really wants to avoid RB because you feel like that's a very fragile position and you kind of want to hammer wide receivers, my take on that is that RBs to me are extremely safe, from a week-to-week standpoint. I tend to like not necessarily focus in on, okay, what did a guy end the year at as far as overall points, and focus more in on, okay, what is the guy giving me points per game? Like, I value that much, much more. If I get 12 games of CMC, I'd gladly take him at 101 every single time, because you're not taking a 0 at that position. But then with some of the wide receivers, and granted, we're all trying to find that, Cooper Kupp of this year or Stephon Diggs of year previously. But if you're just taking this kind of shotgun approach and I'm just going to draft a bunch of them, well, now you're going to be having a bunch of, starting roster spots that are going to have these high variant weeks where guys are going to be giving you 0s or single digits. And it's going to be kind of tough, I think, to win in a format where other guys are providing more dependable week in and week out numbers. How successfully you start someone, because again, some of these guys you may draft, say you draft a Christian Kirk, and say Christian Kirk kind of has an average year. He has some boom weeks and he has some weeks that are so-so. But how often do you start him on those boom weeks? So in essence, like, you're carrying around this dead weight. You have no idea when to start this guy. You may miss a week and then you put him in your lineup and then you get a 0. So now you take 2 hits on there. So me in general, even if I go like, start off with 3 or 4 wide receivers, I'm just hammering RBs, because eventually, towards the end of the year, ideally I'm starting 4 running backs that I feel confident they can give me 15 plus points week in and week out. unless I just hit on that wide receiver, who's proven that he can be reliable on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. And ABIB, I want to get to the 4 running backs start for you, right? Just on the topic of going in, I think that the one team, I know we pointed out 12, team 11, and I meant to do a little bit of work and research, but par for the course for me, I didn't. Dublin Caudle, I just wonder if that's Colin Kelly from the RotoViz guys. I didn't double check that. I don't know if you guys know his thing.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
It says Dublin in it, so it could be some kind
I don't know, but it was the Mike Evans pick for me. That almost seemed like a pick where they were thought damn sure they were going to get Debo in the second round, and they were just committed that would as you said, people okay, maybe Team 12 just likes Debo a lot, but it was it was Mike Evans that really stood out of you didn't have to take Mike Evans there, but unless you were purposely I'm going to make a yellow freak show roster. I think that one was the one that really stood out, and I think that immediately texted Theo I think they're just going 0 RB just for the hell of it and not really thinking through the why they should be doing it.
Yeah, and Mike Evans is I like Mike Evans, but he's such a dangerous pick to me. We talk about on the pod a lot talent versus situation, and ideally in the first round you're getting a guy who just dominates both. He has great talent and he's in a great situation. Those are the safest plays. Those are the easy click button plays.
Yeah.
And yes, Mike Evans is a great talent, but is he really a top tier talent? At what point have we ever drafted Mike Evans in the first round throughout his career? Almost never. And he's played with some really good quarterbacks. Even though Jameis Winston was a turnover machine, he was still someone who was willing to throw the ball up, and obviously playing with Tom Brady. And if you go back and look at Mike Evans' previous years, even in years where he dominates from a TD standpoint, which is where I think what I think we're gravitating towards this year, he's still kind of not giving you really that kind of top 4, top 5 wide receiver overall type numbers. So and I think this we drafted I think before we kind of got some of the Godwin news, but even then you still have to anticipate Godwin coming back. I'm actually kind of still a Gage fan. And even though Julio is old, he's going to provide you some weeks. He's going to provide you some weeks. So, to me, the Mike Evans pick there is a tough one to swallow. You can make an argument for all these guys in terms of how they can fail, but the argument as far as how Mike Evans catches 90+ passes, 1,500+ yards, and double TDs, I think is one that's harder to make. So,
if he has an average Mike Evans season, then you did not get return on value at pick number 13, at pick number 14. 14. So it's that's the difficult thing with Mike Evans. I will say this: if you're a Vegas odds guy, he's plus 700 to lead the league in touchdown receptions. So I think the bet on Evans, it's difficult to bet on touchdowns, but I think that's the bullish argument is this is his 15 touchdown year. But again, I would not have gone in that direction. Certainly at the 202. Yeah. We really liked Andrew. We really liked kind of how the tail end of this first round went because we knew that some value would start falling to us. Yeah. We see Swift, Henry, Cook, Saquon go. We were a little disappointed to see Kyle Pitts go. That would have been a tough decision. That would have been a tough decision, especially the Andrews' love for Kyle Pitts in that spot. But we were happy to get Mixon. I think we have the lowest. At the time we drafted,
certainly we had one
in a mail.
Yeah. Mix. I love the pick there. We get into these drafts and all off season, especially early on, or once we kind of get to the point where we are now with training camp, we get all these hype guys. And Mixon is really one of those hype guys. But there's a lot to be said that Mixon has as much upside as anybody else here in the second round, given the offense that he plays in. He's just not a sexy pick, but he's still a very, very, very solid pick. And what I'm thinking about in this round, a guy who can produce end of year RB1 numbers from a points per game basis. But is this a guy that in those money weeks can give me 15 to 20 points, 3 consecutive weeks? And Mixon can definitely do that. Is this a guy that can give me a 30, 40 point game? By scoring 3 or 4 TDs. Mixon in that offense can definitely do that. So I love that pick there. I love that pick there.
I'm glad that you said you loved it, B, because I didn't. I liked it a lot. No, I after I saw the build, right, like the hindsight being 2020, and Theo knows this, like he knows that I was like losing my mind, like Mixon versus Higgins, it was going to be like a Bengal. I was trying to get Higgins, and the argument of us having the low on Mixon was great, but I was losing my mind in the moment. But after seeing the rest of the board, seeing how it went, and seeing the overall build, Mixon was like absolutely the splash play. But like I went back and forth like on that pick. Like, even after we're around like 6 or whatever, I'm just like texting Theo, like, all right, I'm finally coming around to Mixon now.
But see, Mixon there versus like Mixon earlier in the second round, like it's just a different type of feel. Like you got him at value, like who else are you going to take after? It's like you're kind of battling between, T. Higgins, but T. Higgins may have fallen back to you,
could have,
and you can still find that T. Higgins pick a little bit later on in the draft. So. And
I like Mixon. I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think that in terms of friendship and how they evolve on the internet, like Austin Martin and I originally bonded over his love of Mixon and me sliding his DMs over Mixon. So I've got a soft spot in my heart for Mixon. But we can get to your second and third round picks,
Abib. You go with Kamara and Fournette in the 2-3 turn. Were there any guys you were hoping, like, were you hoping for a Tyreek there? And were there other guys you were considering when you took Kamara and Fournette?
Was absolutely praying and hoping for Tyreek Hill or even Javonte Williams. And, it sucks when the board follows your rankings and tiers. And not only your rankings, but like your tiers. And like, you're like, oh, crap. Everyone in that tier is gone now. So now I got to, so at this point, I'm thinking, I'm always thinking roster construction, but I'm like heavily thinking roster construction because me going Kamara and Fournette here really puts you in a bind as far as, what potential wide receivers come back to you. And we'll kind of, talk about that a little bit later. But in essence, what I thought to myself was, you know what, all the guys are gone in my tier. Let me just get the guys who I feel are going to provide me the most points. And it really, literally just kind of came down to that. I haven't really been one who's kind of been fading Kamara because of the potential suspension news. In fact, I think I've been, getting into drafts just to see how far I can get them and how late I can get them. The 212 is not amazing value, but I think we start to see his ADP rise, the closer we get and the less news we hear about a imposing suspension. The hardest pick here was the Leonard Fournette pick. There were a handful of wide receivers and between Higgins, Pittman, A.J. Brown, and I'm currently, in a main right now where I have the 101 and literally had this exact same decision. And I've now included Cortland Sutton actually into that group.
I love it.
Yeah. I fallen in love with Cortland Sutton.
I don't mean to slow you down. I'm definitely going to go back to that. You keep going.
Yeah. So in retrospect, I probably would not go Fournette again. This is actually my first and only Fournette share. I shouldn't say only, but I'm underweight on Fournette.
Yeah.
But I can see a scenario, at any point in the draft, you need to be able to, tell yourself a story, have a narrative where your team can succeed. And this team is one that follows a narrative that, okay, we saw a down year from RBs. Maybe we see a year where RBs, start to kind of really take the lead, as far as overall fantasy points. Fournette still plays in a very high-powered offense with a quarterback who loves to include his running backs in the passing game. Maybe we see that uptick in TDs with no Gronk. I think we've all been looking at Evans, but maybe we also see some TDs that are picked up on the ground with Fournette. I think we're all kind of worried about the rookie. I'm not necessarily worried about the rookie overtaking his job. I am worried about Fournette staying healthy when I need him. He gives me this sort of kind of just this uneasy feeling. So, but I ended up going that. I ended up just kind of going for upside there. I think, T. Higgins I like, but at best he is a 1B, in a 1A situation. So I feel like that caps him. Pittman's still in an offense that, is going to favor the run, and I really do buy into this Hines being much more involved. Paris Campbell can stay healthy. Alex Pierce in the red zone. I still like Pittman. I like the idea of, Matt Ryan really targeting that number one guy, but, I just wasn't necessarily sold on that. A.J. Brown was a tough one. And so, not to spoil it, but in my current main, I ended up going A.J. Brown in that situation. So,
what was that start? CMC and then what?
CMC, Kamara again,
Kamara
and then AJ Brown.
Okay.
I strongly considered CMC, AJ Brown, and Cortland Sutton, but
okay.
I didn't have enough balls, I guess.
We've talked about the AJ Brown. I'm glad to see you did that, Abib, because Andrew and I have talked about an AJ Brown at the 2-3 turn, because he's often going in like the mid-third, and I feel like there's going to be some team that has AJ with a potential McCaffrey or Taylor, where if everything goes right, that team could have the nuts. Kind of would come down to Kamara for you in that one. In terms of other people might have a little something else unique, but like AJ's super interesting. And actually, Andrew and I, maybe Andrew, you could talk about our decision to go Travis Etienne, because we were between Etienne and AJ Brown.
Yeah, no, I loved AJ Brown, and I think that we had just had Ben Gretsch on, and we were talking about Higgins versus AJ Brown and like the debate that we were having, because we just done maybe like a football guys. Yeah, we love AJ Brown, but I think it came down to Etienne seemed like he had potential breakout upside, and I think he was like, and going back to my freak out of Mixon versus Higgins, which is certainly a straitjacket situation. We were looking ahead to the third round. I was like, hey Theo, like what if we go Higgins here and Etienne's in the third round? I think we feel good. And, because I was looking, I was like, we'll do hero RB and maybe we figure out with Etienne. But, so I guess my point is that we had our eyes set on Etienne from round 2. It was just like that with that different build in the second. But I think that in terms of like, being in Jacksonville, liking his pass catching upside, Etienne made the most sense for us there. I don't know if you had anything to
well, I think that like we structurally the idea to go with 2 running backs early, it kind of opens us up to some of the wide receivers that Andrew is a big fan of, and some that I like as well in the next few rounds, because we lock down RB2. We view Etienne as a really high outcome type guy because of his pass catching ability. But I think having him as the RB2, especially with Jacksonville offense, could potentially struggle a little bit. I like that a little more, where we have him with Mixon, and he still has potential to catch a lot of passes. So I like that one a lot. It's tough to go with him over AJ Brown, but I think looking at the way the board fell, we like our build more going running back there. Nothing really stands out. I want to kind of get to our Hollywood Brown pick, and then we want to be to talk about his 4-5 turn. So, Andrew, we come back around. Was there anybody you were really hoping would fall to us? I know we talked about Cortland Sutton. We were hoping he landed to us. Is there anybody else that maybe you, in hindsight, wish you would have taken instead of Hollywood Brown, or anybody that you were hoping would fall there?
No, just looking ahead slightly to round 5, Josh Allen would have been really tempting. I started texting Theo at midnight because I think that pick came in at like 1 a.m. or something when we were asleep for the Josh Allen. I was like, hey, like I want to put something on your radar, and I don't want to say it out loud just in case it gets spoiled. Nevertheless, I just think that the end of the 4th round is really weird because a lot of this wide receiver tier gets cleared out. And I really do think that Hollywood Brown is the best of them before you get back into like the DK Metcalf turn, which you went a couple picks afterwards. So I just think that Hollywood was kind of who I was hoping for, who I was really expecting to be there. And I'm, I ended up glad we took him. And I think just pairing that with 4-5, the Hollywood Bateman, and I don't want to, I want to save the quarterback conversation for later, but Hollywood Bateman there, I think really does a good job of opening up 2 awesome quarterbacks for round 6, round 7, and I don't think anymore, but round 8 potentially.
And also, Andrew, I'll give you credit. You're always good at trying to see a stack down the line, and when you have Hollywood and you have Bateman, it opens up to Kyler or Lamar. Which spoiler alert, we end up going Lamar, but that's because. Well,
like I said, I was gonna give a beep shit later because I don't know why he's taking Murray from us. But anyways, I think I like it better for Lamar. But we can talk about that now or later.
So, Abib, you took a long time with the Montgomery and Cooks picks at the 4-5 turn. Maybe talk a little bit about your process there, what guys you were hoping would fall to you, and your ultimate decision to go with something a little boring for you. Who I know 4-5
Yeah.
turn you like going a little more exciting than Montgomery, but
Yeah. So, I was hoping someone like, T-Mac, one of these kind of young studs would fall to me. Didn't make it. And so at this point, I'm looking on the board. And again, I'm kind of just going back and trying to, tell myself a story, who on the board has the highest upside, and I know we all kind of define upside very differently. And we have kind of different lenses when we see upside. But even a guy like David Montgomery, I think, in the right circumstance, to me at that point in time, really had the highest upside. I definitely thought about Josh Allen there, and thought about a number wide receiver between Bateman and Mooney, but felt like I'd be able to get a pretty, higher end QB there, and with this sort of kind of rough start, I didn't want to put myself in too much of a hole. So, the kind of upside, and, full disclosure, like I do not own much David Montgomery at all. Full disclosure. But again, like
ABIB wants to clarify that for America right now.
Yeah. But, there are, by season's end, we're going to look back and say, man, I didn't see that coming, or how did I miss out on that? And it's because we didn't open ourselves up to the potential narrative or the story of this, coming to fruition. So the narrative, for David Montgomery is just that he's the most experienced back there. Okay. He's not this athletic freak by any means, but he's kind of the jack of all trade. And really what it came down to me when I kind of did the deep dive and read through all the athletic articles and tried to get as much, listen to as much coaching interviews as possible, was that I got this sense that they trust him the most when it comes to pass protection. And they also believe that he's a competent receiver, and they want all their backs to be that. But in my mind, this is a team that's going to be trailing quite a bit, okay? And I used this argument last year with Swift, where who's the back that's going to be in there, in the hurry-up 2-minute offense when they're trailing? Who's going to be in there, off the goal line? To me, that's going to be David Montgomery. So there's a situation where he's seeing 70-plus targets. He's getting the far majority of the goal line work. And then ideally in this new offense that's a little bit more creative than what they were in last year, moving to, kind of a more, outside zone scheme, with more RPO, with maybe Fields coming into his own, we see a situation where maybe he's more efficient as well. But it's really the targets and or the potential for the targets and receptions that got me onto him. He's not someone that I think is just going to turn into a JT, but he is someone who I feel like can get me there with receptions. And, there's been a lot of talk about him and sharing the work. This was something that I, was well aware of and felt was going to happen regardless. But I think that they're going to be such a run heavy team that it's not going to matter, with 15 or so carries per game and 4 to 5 targets. I mean, he could literally smash at this ADP. Whether that happens or not, I know it's a, potential, low volume offense. It is something that I think is still very, very much in the realm of possibility. So that's the story that I told myself, and that's why I clicked on the David Montgomery button. And at that point, for me personally, Brandon Cooks was the best wide receiver on the board.
So Theo, go ahead.
The Cooks one, you're in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
You're really in touch with the Texans. Mm-hmm. All the first and 15 guys are. They're really, really, really into that team. And if I need a Texans question answered, I'll usually ask you or Theo. Would you consider any of the wide receivers after Cooks, or is it like Cooks and then a teardrop for you?
No. I think Cooks is to me is in that Terry McLaurin tier. He's in the who else is in that tier for me? That's probably about it. I have Rashad Bateman and Darnell Mooney, and just a tick below. And I think I may be a little bit higher on Darnell Mooney, than Bateman. I love Bateman's profile. Just from an athletic standpoint. My only worry with that offense is, how many times are they going to throw? I really feel like they're going to want to revert back to what they, when they were successful, 2019, 2020 season. I thought that they had to pass a lot out of necessity from last year. But even then, we may still see Bateman smash. But that was the one worry. And Darnell Mooney, I think Bateman has a better profile, but Darnell Mooney is just so, to me, so far and away leads that Bears wide receiving corps and could realistically see like 160 plus targets. And if he's able to hit on a couple of those downfield targets, and come down with 6 to 7 TDs, he can really pay off his ADP right now. So he's someone I love drafting, and it's more so because of where he's going.
Yeah, he flashed big time this week. He had a big one-handed catch on the sideline from Fields. It was great to see. Andrew, we were texting one another last year. Our best main event team, we won the league. We had most points. Was a Josh Allen team, and we kind of were getting hope that it was going to happen again. He ends up going one spot ahead of us. We ended up taking Bateman. We were both pretty in unison that Bateman was the correct pick there, right there. It took us about maybe 5 minutes to.
Once we woke up, once we were both awake.
Yeah, we were both awake. We want to get it in and keep the draft moving. So I think we can move on from Bateman.
Well, the only thing I'd say, Theo, as I did catch you say, it took a long time at the turn, the 4-5 turn, and while true, it wasn't very nice. So I want that on the record. It was true, but not nice. No, I would say, Theo, the only before we move on from the round 5 wide receivers, I have Mooney, Juju, and Amon-Ra, who went the next 3 in a tier of like I don't want to get stuck with them, and maybe they work for a certain build like as like wide receiver like 4 or whatever. But I was really worried that we were going to lose Bateman, Cooks, and Judy at that turn. So I think I was looking for a wide receiver in round 5, but certainly held the Bateman and Judy in a higher level than Mooney, Juju, or Amon-Ra. So, and
then Andrew, we had a tough one in the 6th round. Devonta Smith, you wanted to push up, and I agreed with you. There was a big run on wide receivers. So like as you saw, the end of the 5th round was all yellow. And then we see Elijah Moore, Adam Thielen, Drake London go. Devonta Smith, in retrospect, do you wish you could trade that for anybody else, or you regardless of his injury right now?
No, I would do that one again, and I think that one really came down for me. It wasn't tight end or running back. We kind of went full Tom Petty with the tight end there, free falling. So like
Jalen Hurts was also in the back of our mind.
And I guess Theo, it really came down to. Do we, at least for me, could we push both quarterbacks back to us, knowing that there was one Josh Allen team? So really, unless Team 3 wanted to get who for some reason is named Team 2, but that's another story. So Team 3 already had Josh Allen, so it's just a matter of could we get around ABIB and the team in the second hole and get both or one of Kyler or Lamar back, and Of course, we take Devonta, which I love, and then ABIB takes Kyler from us, and so it ended up working out because Team 2 didn't take one, so they were the last team we had to fade. They did Josh Jacobs, so we were able to get Lamar back to us, which was great to stack with Bateman. I know you have a ton of those teams, Theo. So I don't know if you want to touch on Devonta Smith, the quarterbacks, or get on ABIB's turn.
I think we got to keep moving for ABIB's time. ABIB, Amari Cooper, does he move up, or does he move up for you with at least knowing? Or at least having an idea of the Deshaun Watson potential suspension?
No.
No. This was more of a need selection for you?
Well, this was actually before kind of the news had dropped, and I think we're kind of hearing 4 to 6. And I was gonna try and structure this draft in a way where like I would have someone as my starting wide receiver 2 in this particular build, and kind of have Amari Cooper waiting in the wings. I'm not as low on Brissett as everyone else. I think even in these like atrocious offenses, someone still has to get the ball. And he is still, to me, I think he gets underrated as far as a route runner and wide receiver. He's still far and away their best wide receiver. So even when Brissett was, in Miami, someone still got the ball, and that person was Waddle. And he was still, fantasy viable as a starter. So it's not as if I can't use him, but it was definitely somewhat of a need. But I didn't want to go too much need. It was really between Cooper and Kadarius Toney at that point. And this was kind of before, I think, a lot of the Kadarius Toney hype. So I, kind of was I had this like fictitious hope of of him falling back to me in the 8th round.
I wouldn't have let it happen, Abib.
Yeah, I figured as much. And so I thought about taking them both at that point, but with this build, I felt like, I need to make sure that I win at one position. And I ended up going Kyler, not necessarily because I wanted to snipe you guys, although it's kind of fun sending you on tilt a little bit.
Well, we had them both open to us. So unless you wanted to go double quarterback on us, we were okay.
No, of course not. But I felt like the reason I wanted to go Kyler is because I thought to my, there's a situation where Rondale Moore, who I ended up missing out on, you guys ended up getting, is leading them as their wide receiver 1 over a period of time. So I felt like let me get Kyler here and then potentially come back and get Moore a little bit later on in the draft.
Andrew, we were happy to get Lamar after Abib went Kyler. I think we kind of see those two guys as truly elite options that could be difference makers. I don't think we need to go too much deep. We all love Lamar Jackson.
No.
Maybe talk about how happy we were when we got Brandon Aiyuk in the 8th round when he came back to us, and how upset Abib was when we took Aiyuk as well. I'd like to hear a little bit from the camp on that.
Well, we should just let Abib talk about how upset he was, and then we just.
Oh man, yeah, you guys sniped me on a couple of, but that getting sniped just means that especially if it's guys you respect, that means okay, I have some, it's like
You're
confirmation bias that it's a good thing that I'm on these guys. It's a good thing.
Theo, he's referring to you, not me. Just so
well, Brandon Aiyuk, we all like Brandon Aiyuk, and he's actually moved up since this draft, so it was good. I mean, you're seeing him go 7th round now.
Yeah.
I think he could be headed higher. He's like the camp star. So we take Brandon Aiyuk. And then Abib, talk to us about your Skyy Moore, Allen Lazard picks.
Yeah. So here, this is definitely a position of need. So at this point, I'm looking, for wide receivers that in my mind have the best upside or the highest upside. Skyy Moore, obviously, I think that situation is starting to kind of feel itself out. It's sounding like Juju may be the guy, but this is a situation where, I'm not necessarily interested in the guy currently. More interested in the guy who's going to, maybe take over the reins later on. And this is also a situation where, at this point, I really want to be focused in on, at least getting a guy who has some talent. Because Brandon Cooks, as much as I love him, his upside, is capped at some point. And same thing with Amari Cooper. So, I had been, hearing and reading things of Skyy Moore potentially lining up in the backfield. And I think one thing that we talked about very, very early on in the offseason was the NFL being this kind of copycat league. And one thing that was very successful last year was this, hybrid RB wide receiver role that, this hybrid back that Debo was, running. So we may see teams not necessarily take that on, as having a full, a guy just, run it as much as Debo, but even, 2 to 3 carries a game can make a significant difference, I think. So I really like that pick there. The Allen Lazard one, I mean, again, kind of going back, he's saying this, this is not a guy that I have a lot of. And he seems to apparently be a very, very polarizing figure. But, I do see a situation where he can pay off, getting him at, in the 9th round, where he can pay that off and he can be a weekly starter at times for me. I don't think that he's going to be a high target guy. I don't think he needs to be, and this is not a bet on Allen Lazard's talent or me placing a chip on Allen Lazard. This is a bet on him playing with one of the GOATs, former reigning MVP. And he's not just, and he's Rodgers is a unique quarterback in a number of different ways. One, if he likes you, he's going to throw you the ball. He's going to get you the ball, And so unprovoked, many times he's mentioned Lazard as his wide receiver 1. So at some point, I just couldn't ignore that. But 2, he's almost like a point guard out there, as far as finding the open man, even when they're not opening, even when they're not open, and throwing them open or putting it in, tight positions where only his man can get the ball. And I love Allen Lazard near the goal line. So I see a situation where, it's kind of maybe like an Adam Thielen type where, maybe he's not, killing it from a reception standpoint or a yard standpoint, but double-digit TDs, I think is something that's well within the realm of possibility. So that's the story I told myself with Lazard. And it, 9th round, I think it's going to kill me.
I like the balance you had where you take the high upside player with a player who we know will have an early role. Yeah. And I like your call on Skyy Moore. I think like if we think back to like rookie year Deebo Samuel, rookie year Tyreek Hill, they tried to get him going with manufactured runs, and by all accounts, it seems like Kansas City's going to do that with Skyy Moore.
Yep.
So he's going to have a fun, growing role. Andrew, maybe talk about the next pick we made, which was James Cook. We were happy to get him at the 904.
Yeah, I think this is another one where we played the odds on our. It was the even round pick. I think we liked both Aiyuk and Cook. I think that we were debating Cook in the 8th round. And again, we made Aiyuk based on construction. Maybe a little bit of a BiLLiE liked him. On a 0% chance Aiyuk would come back, but maybe there was a 20% chance we said that Cook could come back to us. And we liked Cook, for the build, right? He's our RB3 through 9. Rookie running back. We don't need him to start right away at all because we got Mixon and Etienne on the board. So he's more of those guys that we want to see how he progresses throughout the year, and maybe he's the smash play on a great team in the money weeks. I think that was more of the bet on Cook. And again, in terms of how we got him, I think it was all an odds game and kind of crossing our fingers and hoping for the best around that.
It was so hard to pass on him there.
Yeah.
So
okay. Good. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, upside there with his receiving ability in that offense. You could draw yourself a picture that he's a must start. Midseason on. It could be a little choppy at first, but I think he'll have a role. And then we loved our Rondale Moore pick. I know Abib's just talked about how he likes Moore. Abib's got to get out of here in a few minutes. Yeah. So Abib, maybe you and Andrew could both just talk about. We had no fear of trying to push tight end, and I think we were both comfortable going late. Maybe Abib, you could talk a little bit about who you selected at tight end, and then Andrew, you could talk about our tight end selection when we wrap this up.
Yeah, the way that I play tight end is, can I get someone at value? So someone's just kind of falling in drafts, and like you mentioned, you got I think you DM'd me about TJ Hawkinson, falling pretty late into the 6th round. Like that's a smash play. Yeah. But otherwise, it's a position like I don't want to force it. And I typically like waiting late anyway. And I really only have a handful of guys who I feel like could potentially break out. And if you can't break out, then I could really care less about who I'm throwing into that starter. And Evan Ingram, I should say the Jaguar starting tight end. Currently, Evan Ingram.
Team tight end. Love.
Yeah. Team Dan Arnold, right? But no, I think he's someone obviously who could, potentially even lead that team in targets. The head coach, obviously, not to go too far into it, but obviously tight end friendly system. So, and then ended up going kind of Hooper late as kind of a safe play again. Someone who, given the current receiver course, I'm not buying into Robert Woods. First year back from an ACL. There's been some talk that they've kind of connected a little bit in camp between Hooper and Tannehill. So I waited. I didn't want to go crazy in terms of getting 3 or 4 trying to fill out that position. Just wanted to grab 2 that I felt comfortable enough starting on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis.
And we really liked your Jalen Tolbert.
I loved it. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Theo.
And Isaiah Pacheco and Gainwell picks. I think rounds, you were very structural and somewhat conservative with some of your earlier picks, but I think you really have exposure to a couple of really high upside guys. We loved what you did there, and you kind of used the back-to-back picks to your advantage to clear 2 of them at a time. Yeah. Those all stand out.
Love that 12-13 turn.
Abib, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? I know you've got to get out of here, and then Andrew and I can talk out the rest of our build.
Yeah, I'm at Twitter at Skywalker2000, as you can see below. Podcast at 1st and 15th. You can also find us on Twitter, on Apple, Spotify, as well as YouTube. It is a live show, or not a live show, but a video podcast. So, would love for anyone listening in to come out and check us out. You guys have been great as always. I love listening in to the Go District. One of my favorite podcasts. It stays in the queue. So I appreciate you guys having me on. I do not want to see you guys in any more mains. Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. Before you go, one last nonsense. 15 seconds. You hide your name here. There was, first of all, there's Twitter conversation yesterday about people bailing when they see you in drafts. You hide your name here as I scroll in with this dot. You really think that's hiding you when they can see your
people know you're the dot, Abib, at this point.
People know you're the dot.
Yeah, it was kind of a running joke at first. I was just very lazy as far as coming up with team names. So it was just dot, and they just kind of ran with it. At some point, I'll go in and replace them all with team 1, 2, 3, etc. But Yeah, I probably need to look into maybe changing my whole username. But we'll see.
Yeah. If you really want to hide, you got to change the username. I think
Too much work.
Builds and like maybe like Dave Hubbard do that too. Anyways,
and we highly recommend listening to First and 15. Andrew and I listen. JD and Dan listen. It's one of our favorite pods as well. So, AB, crush your draft tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. You guys have a good one.
You
too. Andrew, sticking with ours, Gesicki. We take Gesicki here in the 11th round. We weren't overly excited, but I think I kind of pushed the Gesicki pick a little bit more than you did. We talked about Everett. We talked about Fant. For me, it was just Gesicki we've seen have success. We expect that the offense takes a step forward. Do you have any trepidation or regrets about making that Gesicki pick? And is there any tight end you would trade him for right now?
No, I mean, in a vacuum, if it was like my team and my team alone, I'm probably taking Everett. I quite frankly don't think it matters though. At the point that we took, Gesicki, he's probably somebody we have to feel more or less obligated to have on the roster the whole year. Not that that's a bad thing, but obviously you can't drop a name like Gesicki unless he gets hurt or whatever. So we'll see. I think he had some bad camp reports or some camp reports that he was going to be inline blocking more, but a lot of that to me means he's on the field. And I'm not as down on the Dolphins offense as some or Tua maybe as some. I could see somebody like I'm not saying he's Kittle talent wise, but somebody who earns his stripes and earns some of those touches. And I think Gesicki can do that. And as you said, he's shown he can put up some numbers before. And ultimately we can stream a little bit.
Yeah, and we've seen him have smashed games, and we've seen him have a 70 catch season. So like we've seen Gesicki have NFL success. He's franchise tagged. He's only on a 1-year deal here in Miami, but it's hard for me to see that him not being a big part of the team. And again, we didn't no draft capital round. So it's kind of like if we would have pushed one of these other guys up, it means we would have lost out on Aiyuk, James.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
Rondell Moore. So I feel like it was a necessary. It was a necessary pick to take Gesicki, and I just have a little less reservations about him than I do the Seattle offense. And Everett, like, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like, I have some Everett for sure, but I think he's the number 4 target on his team. With Eckler getting a lot of targets and the 2 wide receivers. So like Everett, we need to have a big touchdown season. I like him, but I don't like him as my tight end 1. Week 1, throw Gesicki out there to the Wolves and let's see what happens. Keep us going here. Tyrion Davis-Price, Brian Robinson, Chris Evans. TDP and Brian Robinson, we made those picks pretty easily.
Yeah.
We almost went Gainwell over TDP.
Yeah.
You could talk about your kind of our decision making with that. I could share mine, or you could share yours.
No, go ahead. I just wonder in hindsight, being 22, I like a lot of these running backs here. 5 went in an 8-pick span. I think we obviously didn't get a chance to ask ABIB if we had gone Gainwell there. Could we have gotten TDP back? My guess is still no.
I doubt it. I think he's taking TDP right there. So my argument where we went Gainwell versus TDP was I think Gainwell has a weekly floor every week, no matter what happens to Miles Sanders. TDP might not. But I think that if Mitchell went down, TDP would be my choice, where he would be the starting running back, and I think he would get the high-value touches. And I think like TDP would be a top 15 play every week that Elijah Mitchell's not out. Now, maybe I could be wrong, and maybe it's Trey Sermon. Maybe it's Jeff Wilson, but I don't see it. I think it's TDP. They use the draft capital on him. He's a big back who's physical. So we like taking him there. We don't like losing Kenneth Gainwell. But I think we were happy to get Brian Robinson. There's some very sharp people on Brian Robinson. There's a couple of high-volume, sharp drafters who have been on the GOAT District, and I won't name names here, but they're taking Brian Robinson every chance they can get. So I like having some exposure to him. I don't think Antonio Gibson is done, but like Brian Robinson gives us another kind of high-end upside. Maybe we have some questions about the Washington offense, but I think you can kind of paint yourself a picture that Brian Robinson in weeks Gibson would be out would be like a top 20 play-ish.
Yeah.
He can catch the ball a little bit. So I think like people have this idea that he's just like this goal line back, but he can catch the ball a little bit. He's an Alabama back and all those good things. We were really happy about Chris Evans. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love Chris Evans, Captain America, to back up with Mixon and without Mixon. And I think we're beyond the 10-round rule, Theo.
Yeah,
right? We can mix it in two. So we got Chris Evans in 14. And man, when did we start talking about Evans?
We started talking about Evans earlier because I had seen in my previous main event.
Somebody
the Joe Mixon team took Chris Evans in the 11th round.
11, yeah,
which is like a we don't recommend that. That's a panic move over. I'm panicking that I might lose my handcuff. It's but at the end of the day, I think people are starting to consider him higher than the 14th round. I think I think you'll start seeing like 14th round for me is a good value for Evans. Like if Mixon went down, I know that there is a love of Samaje Perine by the coaching staff, but at the end of the day, Evans has the juice. And I think we're happy to get him. And we liked our team enough. I'll steal this line from ABIB. ABIB will always say he likes to handcuff when he likes his team. We liked our team enough that we really wanted to handcuff Mixon. And I think with handcuffing kind of gets a bad rap in these formats where people think it's kind of like limits your upside. But at the end of the day, with the long season, you might get 3 starts out of a guy. And I mean, you can't really project too many of these running backs to play every single game. So if we get 3 starts out of Evans, then it's a great pick.
And I mainly like that. I've adopted that your 10-round rule. I like being that far away, right? You wouldn't do Jones or Dillon if those were even handcuffs now. But I love the idea that we got him 11 rounds, 12 rounds after value. So
yeah, the 10-round rule is basically, if you take your starting running back, you don't draft his handcuff for at least 10 rounds, you're gonna like your build better than trying to force it. And like you're starting to see now some of these teams where maybe you see somebody take Singletary and a James Cook. Like I kind of get it, but it's to me it's like you're using such early draft capital on one position, and it
goes back to not to cut you off, but you have to draft as if you're right. Like if Singletary's the hit, then Cook is not, is inherently not. So I don't mind. Like again, I think the 10-round rule is just like not like a force you to do it, but it keeps you honest and keeps you building the right way until you have some of these lottery tickets anyways.
And also we also see like just kind of moving forward in our draft. We talked to each other about how happy we were that we added the Aiyuk and more picks because a lot of our favorite like double-digit round wide receivers all went. And people really, really pushed wide receiver in this draft. We don't need to go through every name, but a lot of the higher upside, young, intriguing wide receivers and a couple of these veterans that we like all went. So like we came around in the 15th round. We saw Etienne go. And we got a tight end that we were happy to get in Brevin Jordan. I think that was a pretty easy pick for me. Yeah. Maybe talk a little bit about Brevin Jordan there, Andrew.
Yeah, I wish we had gotten a chance to talk to ABIB because I think Dio and Chris, they like Pharaoh Brown.
So the Pharaoh Brown situation, like it's okay. So the Pharaoh Brown has his fans in Houston, but there's also a ton of buzz on Brevin Jordan. They're also lining up Brevin Jordan in the backfield at times as like a halfback, kind of fullback. Brevin Jordan, by all accounts, is flashing at camp. He's a Miami tight end. I know that's square to say, but we love seeing Miami tight ends excel in the NFL. I liked Brevin Jordan as a prospect. I think it was like the Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth kind of, pushed him down, but I liked him. I drafted him like late in rookie drafts when he was a rookie. And I still have hope for him this year as like a bounce back tight end. So I think they're going to be in 2 tight end sets a lot. And I think they're going to be passing a lot. So I like our pick there. And having Brevin Jordan as our tight end too, I liked it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So 2 things. I'm going to use the other side of the argument of Gesicki. So for Gesicki, I said, it's great that he's on the field even if he's blocking because at least he's on the field. Pharaoh Brown, I'm going to put, it's the same thing, right? He's on the field a lot because he's blocking. Yeah, but Brevin Jordan's out there catching passes. So it's the same side of the argument. Let me just argue either side that I like for this particular player that I like. I like that Brevin Jordan or Pharaoh Brown's going to do the blocking, so Brevin Jordan can go catch passes. The other thing to mention, Theo, the T-shirt intern, we got to get him on this. When you pass on, and there was the tight end pod yesterday, which I got to catch up on. But when you let the tight ends go and you don't crank purple, as Crack Rock says, we got to have the T-shirt that says you let the tight ends do a Tom Petty, a free falling into nothing. So I think that we did that. I think that we did it well here with a couple of tight ends that we grabbed. So, anyways,
we'll have to send one of those T-shirts to our boy Josh McAtee in the chat.
Right.
Josh is saying TDP was the pick for you because you do not need to start him.
Yeah.
I love that. And then Josh adds that if we were so Andrew, maybe you could elaborate on this, but if we had been a hero build and like James Cook was our RB2,
yeah,
we would have been forced to take Gainwell, correct?
That's right.
So Josh nailed that. So it's a structural thing where TDP could have 0 carries week 1, and would not really affect us. Whereas certain teams Andrew and I had put together, we might need Gainwell to start week 1 for that floor play if we went with a true hero. Josh also shares that Evans is a pass catching RB target with upside if Mixon goes down. Absolutely, we agree on that for sure. Shout out to Joey Brown in the chat as well. I want to wrap this up. I know you've got places to go, Andrew, but Justin Tucker and Indianapolis defense, we pushed them up, and I know you like to do this occasionally. Maybe talk about how you like to go kicker and defense a little ahead of the curve in like the 16th, 17th instead of waiting until like the 19th, 20th.
Yeah, and I think 16, 17 is slightly early. So hopefully this makes sense, Theo. And I know you did some stats information as well. Want to get to that.
So Tucker and Lamar have.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We did this. We did a brief. I did a brief Twitter study here over the last couple of years.
That's an information desk. It was
kicker,
great
over kicker quarterback correlation. The hit rates are not tremendous on having a kicker and a quarterback start together from the same team. However, you have Lamar Jackson in his QB1 season. Justin Tucker was kicker 3 overall. So we've seen them excel next to one another. We all know how talented Justin Tucker is. So it's kind of like we're really, really, really betting on that Baltimore offense because we'll be starting Bateman, we'll be starting Tucker, and we'll be starting Lamar Jackson. And I think that the bull argument was, let's say that Baltimore has a low-scoring week, but it's a field goal friendly game, and it's a game that we need to get points at. At least we will have exposure to the Baltimore offense in that sense. So That was a tough one, but again, we like taking Tucker. But are you doing that regularly, Andrew? Or are you?
Yeah. So going back to this, like maybe this, rein me in if this doesn't make sense. When you're picking early in the draft, right? Your 20th round pick is going to be obviously one of the last 4 picks of the draft here. It almost makes sense in my head to be getting your quarterback or your kicker in your defense before then. That way you can save your 20th round pick for your favorite flyer. So because you're going to, what I don't want to end up with the bottom of the barrel kicker where I'm going to be streaming, I'd rather have like a lottery pick in that late 20. So if I'm in the first half of drafts, I am definitely moving up kicker and defense. Normally 17, 18 to leave 2 slots towards the end of the draft. But I definitely want to have them on board, knowing that, obviously by the time it gets back to me, everyone in the back half of the draft will have had to already have their full roster, their kicker defense. So it's just a little bit of structural. I'm not so much worried about losing lottery tickets in that 17th, 18th, and again, in our case, 16, 17 here, because I am cycling through the lottery tickets, right? That, the Chris Evans, a round or 2 earlier, Pierre Strongs as we ended up getting on the board. Like I can cycle through those guys. And until ADP really solidifies, when we get in early September in Vegas, I don't really need to be worried about losing out on like the lottery ticket du jour. So I'd rather have on board a kicker that we like, Tucker, and then a defense that you really had your eyes set on for their early season schedule, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, I like Indianapolis defense a lot this year. 3 of their first 5 games are smash plays, and I think they're a very talented defense as well. So I'm into them, and I was happy where we got them. 2 of our last 3 picks were really like lottery ticket running back picks, but I did want to touch on Greg Dulcich. We were happy to get him there in the 19th round. Is that a guy that you think is going to be on our team after week 3, or is this a lottery pick for you?
Woo! No, lottery ticket and more of like a I don't know if this word works, but like arbitrage, like right, like he does well in any of his preseason games. Theo, he's going to be around 14, 15, right? And so I think just having him on the board and not having to spend money and having a couple of weeks of free looks, I'm not so much. Maybe we pick this guy up and drop him 3 or 4 different times on the season, but it was more of like a play on who could we see spiking on a sick catch, a preseason game, etc. And tight end premium, it made sense to have Dulcich on board. And of course, we're no dummies. Imitation's the sincerest form of flattery, right? We see other high stakes pods like ours on Greg Dulcich, and of course that perks our ears up. And we got to be thoughtful about that and kind of see where the meta is going. So we're always in tune with the ADP and the right picks there.
Yeah, and I'll say like the Greg Dulcich selection, post Tim Patrick injury, what if Dulcich plays some more wide receiver snaps? I think that's the bull argument because he was a wide receiver.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so he's got different paths to being a usable fantasy player this year. He either out snaps Alberto, or maybe he's some kind of hybrid wide receiver tight end for them, but. By all accounts, they really, really like him at camp. I think that there's a lot of people on him. So it's an interesting one.
And I think Theo, I think that Patrick got hurt maybe around the David Bell pick. So I think it was like pretty like the news came out and like we were pretty tight on the clock, and I think it ended up making it a no-brainer for a number of reasons.
All right, so listen, we're going to wrap it up. We're at an hour. This was awesome to do, Andrew. We're going to be back drafting with one another for a MiLLy BiLLiE's a football guys draft. We haven't really set that date, but maybe sometime in the next week or so.
Agreed, to be scheduled.
Awesome, and then
and we're sliding into people's DMs about getting main events going.
We're going to do a main event with our boy the Guilds. Andrew and I are going to split a main event with the Guilds. Andrew and I have a ton of drafts we're doing this year. A couple with Dan Williamson, but we added one with the Guilds today, so I'm sure we're gonna review that one. It'll be another main event. And then look for JD coming back on. They're going to be balling this week, most likely tomorrow night with Kevin Wheeler as a guest, where JD is going to draft a best ball team. I drafted one with JD last Friday night. It was a blast. I'm sure it's going to be a great broadcast. So look for the announcement for that one for tomorrow night. Andrew, this was a blast as always. And have a good night.
Thanks, chat. Thanks, Theo. Thanks, ABIB.
And shout out to 1912, Josh, Joey. The chat was lit. We'll look for you guys later in the week. Take care.
Thanks.